And I would contend that that normal force, well, one, when he's sitting in the car, it's an internal force. That is not enough to get the car to move forward. It would not get the car to do anything. It is the friction on the road that causes the car to go forward. So based on that thinking, which way is friction acting on the car?
To the right, I guess.
Yes.
Raised wheel. I guess traction, essentially.
All right, FC, and then if you've ever been stuck in mud and you gun it, knowing it's a foolish thing to do intellectually but emotionally, you gun it hoping to get out, and you get all that stuff, mud being sprayed in the back. Yeah, this is the friction right here. This is the force right here that's causing the ground to go shooting backwards. All right, let's look at it from a different point of view. Car wheel. If I want to move that way, so in this situation right here, which way is the wheel going to be turning? Okay. Think about this piece of paper right here. As the wheel turns like that, this paper is being pushed that way. Friction is opposing the point of contact. It's opposing what this part of the wheel wants to do. This part of the wheel wants to move that way, and friction says, I don't want you to do that, so I'm going to push you that direction on the wheel. So most people think about the movement of the car, but it's really the movement of the tire that's causing the friction. And I made it a four-wheel drive because then there's only one friction force we have to deal with. Let's suppose it was front-wheel drive. The car's going that way. If it is front-wheel drive, which way is the force acting on the front wheels? Okay. Call it F2. Which way is friction acting on the back wheels?
That way, because it's resisting because there's no power to it.
Resisting what?
It's resisting because there's no power to the wheel.
If there were ice, this wheel would just sort of drag along. Unlike this one, if there were ice, this one would still be spinning. So it's friction that is causing this wheel to rotate. Back wheel drive, this was front wheel drive. Which way is friction acting on the front wheel and back wheel drive?
Opposite of that.
And then it's the back wheel that's causing it to go forward. So I made it all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, whichever one, four-wheel drive, just so we don't have to think about that part. But I've exposed you to it so I can throw it in and test it. There's the other pen. All right, we've got two more pairs of friction. We got that normal force friction pair, we got that normal force friction pair, we got that one, that one. Oh, we have three more pairs.
Well, we have the box in the car.
Okay, which way is it acting on the box?
Forwards.
Friction in between the guy and the chair.
Okay, which way is it acting on the chair? Or on the guy? Either one.
This way and this way. So guy this way and chair this way.
Guy that way,
Yes.
chair that way.
Yes.
What would be accelerating him that way then?
Vehicle.
There's got to be a force involved. If you've ever been on a slick seat and you gun it, you're going to slide backwards relative to the seat around. So there's got to be something that's opposing. He would slide that way relative to the seat, and so the seat goes no. friction is pushing it that way. And one more pair.
Between the chair and the car.
We got that already, that's the FH.
The pedal,
Not the pedal, but the rod.
the rod.
The drive. So as he is pushing this way, so imagine that I'm pushing in that direction. Is my, as it is right now, if I push that way, is my hand gonna slide on this thing?
Yes, it will slide down
Yeah, so which way is friction acting on my hand?
upwards.
Up and at an angle. So there is friction acting, that way on me, or on Edro, and then that way. Sorry, using A for that, A, F, A.
But doesn't friction exist opposite of the desired motion?
Relative motion. So in that particular case, my hand desires to slide, from the rod's point of view, my hand's gonna slide that way. So therefore, the rod says, I'm gonna oppose that.
Oh, okay, I see.
So should there be an opposite to that?
Yeah, and I drew that on here, there's F in the mangled A, right there and there and there.
Okay.
And even given space, I didn't give enough space here, so.
On a test, would we have the ideal rope too, or would we have?
At this point, yes.
Okay,
We will deal with some of the ideal nature of it
Okay.
for future chapters.
Would it be like a pre-drawn diagram that you'd fill out with forces, or would you have to make the whole thing?
Pre-drawn, just so that you know, because otherwise, how would you know the chair is not part of the vehicle? Because I think most of our experiences, the chairs are attached.
Yeah, sometimes.
Depends on how old, beat up, and cheap it is. More expensive, I don't know, chairs easily detachable in stock car and F1. I would think they'd have to still be attached.
They have like the plastic pieces that you put in that it's shaped to the driver's back.
Oh.
But the actual seat doesn't move. No.
Yeah, that'd be kind of crazy.
I've seen a foldable chair in a car,
You seen what?
a foldable chair.
Oh, you
I have an office chair in my work truck that's bolted into the.
If it has wheels, why bolt it? Just sort of slide around as you go around curves.
I took the wheels off so I could bolt it.
All right, so this is a test level problem. So on test 1B, there will be a problem of this type. It will not be this problem.
So like, you said like you had something attached to a sled.
Yeah, there's one of the, I know I did a PowerPoint that should be posted where it's dad pulling boy on sled. Actually, dad pulling the sled with the boy on it. I've got one where he's pulling the sled and one where the boy's holding onto the rope, but I can't remember which one I posted. And there's also another one where I've gone through, well, pretty much the same stuff we've done here. I've got several videos on that, and I've got one to the beat of Sing Sing Sing, where I go through various examples with a nice jazz beat, big band jazz.
So when we like fill this out for every like subscript, you want us to like put like a legend or something?
No, I can, if you decide to do something different that has nothing to do with it, like put a 3 there, it's the third weight, then I know that W stands for weight. The only time you would do, if you wanted to use L for weight, that would be nice to let me know that you're doing that, because otherwise I think it's mislabeled. In terms of subscripts, just, I'm looking for pairs. I got W sub 3 here, then I expect to see a W sub 3 down here. Other questions before I put this into a context of actually solving problems?
Did we ever get the force from the driver onto the stick?
Yeah, that's the force that the driver exerts on the stick. There's a normal force and friction. Those are the two forces the drivers exert. Is that what you were looking for?
I guess.
You feel like there should be something else?
Well, it's just a normal force and friction force.
Yeah, that's,
There's nothing that's him pushing.
well, that, him pushing is the normal force. The normal force is actually his pushing, and the friction there is because of his hand's gonna drag along it. I feel like we're out of sync here.
But if the normal force is just keeping things apart, is there anything actually causing it to move?
It's keeping things apart because if I push my hand in that direction right there, I mean, right now there's a normal force between my hand and the rod because it's keeping my hand
Yeah.
from going through the rod, or keeping the rod from going through my hand, either one. So I just have it at an angle here, and so as he's pushing on it, there's still that normal force that's keeping the hand from actually going through here.
Yeah.
Because his hand would move faster for the same amount of effort on his part. His hand would move faster if the rod were not there. Still feel like we're on sync here. Do I?
Well, yeah, well, where's the force of him actually pushing?
That, I mean the force that he exerts on the rod, or
Yeah.
the force that he exerts on the rod, that is, the normal force is the force he exerts. And then friction is a byproduct of that because his hand would slide since he's pushing in that direction.
Okay, I guess.
I feel like you're still not satisfied with that.
I think I just don't understand.
Give me an example of something that's a lot clearer of what you're looking for.
Well, if you push sideways on this table,
Right.
there's a normal force pushing this way on my hand.
Correct.
Or at the table from facing through, and then on the table that way.
Correct.
But are we just saying that the normal force on the table is bigger because it's
Then on his hand?
But in that case, nothing would be moving, right? Assuming I were able to push this table.
If you're looking to decide if something's going to move or not, or accelerate or not, it's a matter of, is the sum of forces acting on that object? So, sorry, I made an assumption, let me back up for a second. Were you saying that it wouldn't move or accelerate because you've got the forces that would cancel each other?
I guess.
Yeah, like the guy on the board, the weight of it pulling like the car.
All right, so in terms of, let's just take a look at Gerard here. Yes, for every one of these forces, there's another force pointing in the opposite direction. However, when we are trying to figure out how is Gerard going to accelerate, what we care about is only the forces acting on Gerard. None of those have another force that is automatically canceling it out. Now, ultimately, there's a net force in that direction because the nature of the problem. This force, the horizontal component of this force, will be greater than that friction force. Let me do another analogy. All right. All right, I'm gonna push on this in that direction. And it's moving to the right. I guess, yeah, you're right. Now, the reason the normal force is not pushing it to the right. The normal force I'm applying is causing friction to push it to the right. So I got two forces involved here. There's a normal force perpendicular to the surface, and then there's a friction force because if this thing were frictionless, my hands would just go boom. So there is that friction force keeping my hands from doing that, and as a reaction, my hands are pushing that way on the book.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Does that resolve the other issue for you, or?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I guess as you think on it, and then later on, you just come back to it again. Other questions before we give this a context? Show you the whole scheme of chapters 4, 5, and 6. And who in here has had physics before? Was that a half? Okay.
Mine was
Alright.
kind of half. It wasn't too long that I had physics for.
Okay. I've had issues with people who've done physics before tend to just ignore what I'm about to do, and then later on when I'm asking questions, assuming that they know how to do it, they're stumped because the problems are far more complex if you know all the shortcuts. So that was just a warning. Just stay tuned for what I refer to as the facades method. Whenever you're given one of these problems, probably the most common thing that you are asked to find is the acceleration. And it is all based upon the relationship between the total force and acceleration. In order to do this, I've come up with what I refer to as the facades method. The first thing you're going to do is what we have just been doing. It's the force diagram. Next, acceleration. I'll put a lowercase t there, acceleration. And then the coordinate axes. Decomposition. Equations of motion. Substitution. Solve. We fix those up here if that's not working or just going well.
If you don't mind.
Is that point good enough?
Yeah, thank you.
Is there an eraser on it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right, so when I make reference to the facades method, I'm talking about going through these steps. Now, the more comfortable you are with it, there are certain steps that you can know that you can skip. But force diagram we've just gone through. The direction of acceleration, generally from context in the problem, you know which direction is. So if I have an object on a ramp and it's going to slide down the ramp, then we know physically, we know from just personal experience which way it's going to accelerate. If you have a problem where you have no idea which way it's going to accelerate, well, then it becomes a whole lot more complicated. Well, not there yet. Coordinate axes will depend upon this. Now, there is a video where I picked the convenient coordinate axes on a box on ramp problem, And then I solved it using horizontal, vertical, and in my opinion, it quadruples the amount of math you have to do. I do not recommend automatically always having your axes like this. As you get farther into physics, a great deal of time is spent trying to come up with a coordinate system that will minimize the amount of math you have to do. Because remember, all this was developed for computers, and if you're doing it by hand, you will look for the shortcuts. Decomposition is breaking a vector up into its components. Equations of motion are all based upon Newton's second law here. Equations of motion is not the formulas we got from chapters 2, 3, and 4. That is not the equations of motion. And then the math bit, substitution to me is part of it because there are certain quantities that have automatic formulas, such as weight. And that's what substitution is, and then solve is the final math piece. All right, so let's go through a simple problem. Let's make this a 5 kilogram mass and a 3 kilogram mass. We're going to start out with a frictional situation. So what is the acceleration of the masses? Assume ideal rope. When I was looking for a job after I'm almost on the PhD, and I was out searching for a job, and one of the jobs I was looking at was Reynolds Packaging, and we were supposed to take a test to determine basic aptitude, and they had a problem like this, and at that point I'm thinking, all right, does the rope stretch? Does the rope have mass? I'm thinking of all those possible exceptions to keep it from being a simple problem. So I go up to the moderator and I ask these questions, and she says, I don't know. And I'm thinking, it's not solvable then.